At the beginning, we are introduced to Nick, who goes to his sister's bar. It's his wedding anniversary today. He's been married for 5 years, but he's clearly unhappy in his marriage. He tells his sister that he's thinking about getting a divorce soon. He also explains that every year on their anniversary, his wife Amy plays a game with him where she hides a gift and leaves behind clues for him to find it. But now, it feels like the love between them has completely faded. Later, when Nick returns home, he notices that Amy isn't there, and the living room table is broken, which immediately raises concern. He calls the police, and a detective arrives with her assistant. As they search the house, they begin to suspect that Nick might be involved in Amy's disappearance, especially after finding evidence suggesting that their marriage wasn't going well. In reality, Nick works as a writing teacher, while Amy is a successful writer who became famous during her teenage years. Now that she's missing, the detective's suspicion grows stronger, and Nick is taken to the police station for questioning. He's asked several questions, but he doesn't respond convincingly, which makes him look even more suspicious. However, there's no solid evidence against him, so the police are forced to let him go. Because Amy is a well-known writer and somewhat of a celebrity, the media quickly picks up the story, and soon the entire country is talking about her sudden disappearance. At the same time, Nick doesn't seem very invested in the case, which causes people to suspect both him and his sister, believing they might have made Amy disappear out of greed for money. When Nick returns home, he starts reflecting on his past. We see that Amy, who is not only famous but also very wealthy, had married Nick, who comes from a middle-class background. Both of them were part of the writing industry, but due to certain circumstances, they both lost their jobs. Around the same time, Nick's mother became seriously ill, and he decided to leave New York to stay closer to her. He didn't tell Amy about this decision at first, but she eventually followed him anyway. Sadly, Nick's mother passes away, and even after her death, Nick continues to live there. He loses motivation to work, and because of that, Amy opens a bar for him, which he runs with his sister. Nick doesn't put in much effort himself, and over time, his relationship with Amy continues to deteriorate day by day. After this, Nick gets a job as a writing teacher at a college, where he meets a student named Andy, and soon the two of them begin having an affair. The story then shifts back to the present, where the detective finds traces of blood inside Nick's house, making her even more certain that he's involved. She also learns from the neighbors that Nick and Amy used to argue a lot, and Amy didn't feel safe in the marriage, which is why she had even bought a gun for protection. When the detective checks the bathroom, she finds Amy's urine samples and sends them to the lab. The report later reveals that Amy was pregnant. However, Nick strongly denies this, saying that he and Amy hadn't been physically close for a long time. The detective doesn't believe him and continues to suspect him. Then a neighbor shows up, claiming she was Amy's close friend, and says that Amy always wanted to start a family but couldn't because her relationship with Nick wasn't good. Nick finds this strange because he knows Amy was never the type to share personal details or befriend neighbors so easily. He even tells this to the detective, but she refuses to believe him. Soon after, the detective finds a partially burned diary written by Amy, in which she mentions that she fears for her life because of Nick. The assistant suggests arresting Nick, but they still don't have solid proof that he actually killed Amy. At the same time, we are shown a woman driving a car, and it's revealed that she is Amy herself, completely changing her appearance and identity. She starts recalling the day she went to the bar to meet Nick and saw him outside with his student Andy, standing very close to each other. That moment broke her, because she had always supported Nick. She also realizes that Nick is planning to divorce her on their anniversary, which pushes her to take revenge. Amy carefully creates a plan to frame Nick. She deliberately spends money using his credit cards to make it look like he's financially irresponsible. She also gets him to sign insurance papers, increasing the payout so it appears that Nick killed her for the money. She befriends a pregnant neighbor and manipulates her by sharing fake stories about constant fights with Nick to gain sympathy. Then, she secretly uses the neighbor's urine and plants it in her own bathroom, so the police would believe she was pregnant and that Nick had a motive to kill her. Amy even drains her own blood and spreads it across the floor before cleaning it up, leaving behind traces for the police to find. Just like every anniversary, she sets up a clue-based game, but this time, the clues aren't for Nick. They are carefully designed for the detectives, leading them step by step toward blaming him for her disappearance. Now Nick goes to his sister's garage, where he discovers a huge amount of shopping items that were bought using his own credit cards. As he and his sister start opening the boxes, they're shocked to find what looks like a murder weapon inside. Seeing this, his sister completely panics, realizing that she could also get dragged into this mess. Nick, however, decides to leave everything there and walks away. But the detective, who has been closely tracking his movements, arrives at the garage and finds the weapon. This leads to both Nick and his sister being arrested. Later, Nick is released on bail and he heads back to New York, where he hires a highly skilled lawyer. He tells him everything and admits that he never really felt safe with Amy, believing that she was mentally unstable. To understand the situation better, Nick meets Amy's first boyfriend, whom she had previously accused of assault and even got arrested. After talking to him, Nick realizes that Amy is following a pattern and is now taking revenge on him. Then Nick goes to meet Amy's second ex-boyfriend, a very wealthy man, but he refuses to speak with Nick because he's still in love with Amy. On the other side, Amy is now living in a small town under a new identity. One day, while she's outside with a neighbor, her hidden stash of money accidentally falls out, and the neighbor notices it. Realizing that Amy has a large amount of cash, the neighbors break into her place at night and steal everything. Now completely broke, Amy has no other option left. She decides to call that same wealthy ex-boyfriend, who still loves her, and asks to meet him. When they meet, she tells him a fabricated story, claiming that Nick used to torture her and that her life was in danger, which is why she ran away and doesn't want to go back home. Believing her completely, her ex-boyfriend takes her in and offers her a place to stay, saying she can live with him for as long as she needs. After this, we see Amy's fans organizing a candlelight vigil for her, where Nick appears and delivers a very emotional speech in front of everyone, asking Amy to come back home. However, Nick's girlfriend Andy is also standing in the crowd, and when she hears this, she becomes furious. Out of anger, she reveals to the press that she and Nick were having an affair. As soon as this news breaks, public opinion completely turns against Nick. People start hating him, fully convinced that he either made his wife disappear or killed her. Later, when Nick meets his lawyer, the lawyer tells him that all the evidence is now stacked against him. He advises Nick to go on a popular talk show and publicly declare his love for Amy, admit his mistakes, and say that he wants his wife and his family back. The lawyer explains that if Amy is orchestrating all of this, she's probably watching the news and might be emotionally prepared by his words and return home. Nick follows this plan and appears on a talk show where he expresses how much he loves Amy and begs her to come back. He even pretends to cry on camera. At the same time, Amy is watching this interview with her ex-boyfriend. She notices that Nick is wearing the same tie she once gifted him, and she carefully listens to everything he says. Her ex-boyfriend also notices how deeply focused she is on the interview. At this point, Amy begins to feel conflicted and starts thinking about going back home, but her ex-boyfriend wants her to stay with him. This begins to frustrate her as her thoughts and emotions start shifting. Meanwhile, the detective discovers that the weapon found in Nick's sister's garage contains Amy's blood. Based on this, Nick is arrested once again. However, his lawyer manages to get him released on bail yet again. On the other side, Amy is shown behaving very sweetly with her ex-boyfriend, acting like she's completely obedient to him, especially in front of the security cameras. But in reality, she has a completely different plan running in her mind. And once her boyfriend leaves, she starts creating injury marks on her own body. Later that night, when he returns, she seduces him, and the two grow physically close. In that same moment, Amy executes her plan. She kills him and then drives straight back to her home. By the time she arrives, the press is already gathered outside. She appears injured and traumatized, and when she sees Nick, he immediately understands that this is just another one of her manipulative setups. Amy is then taken to the hospital, where she gives her statement to the detective. She claims that back in school, she and her ex-boyfriend Desi Collins were once in a relationship, but even after they broke up, his obsession with her never ended. She says he used to constantly send her letters, and on her anniversary, he suddenly showed up at her house. According to her story, she tried to escape into the kitchen, but he attacked her with a stick, knocked her unconscious, and took her to his house, where he held her captive and assaulted her. She adds that the police can verify everything through his CCTV footage. In reality, Amy had been carefully acting in front of those cameras the entire time, making it look like she was being held against her will. Meanwhile, the detective, who has been working on this case for a long time, begins to suspect Amy. She starts to believe that Nick might have been telling the truth all along. The detective questions Amy, asking that if she was truly kidnapped by Desi, then how did the murder weapon end up in Nick's sister's garage? Amy avoids answering directly and instead says that if she hadn't returned, they would have already sent her innocent husband to prison. She then pretends to faint, but by now, the detective is clearly suspicious of her. After this, Nick brings Amy back home and tells her to stop the act, saying he knows she's lying and that she's the one who killed Desi Collins. Before responding, Amy first checks if Nick is secretly recording her. Once she's sure he isn't, she calmly reveals the truth and tells him that no one will ever believe him because the entire world is now on her side. She adds that after watching his interview, she became convinced that he is the right man for her, which is why she came back. Nick shares all of this with the detective and his lawyer, but the detective explains that there's no solid evidence against Amy. Since the report states that she killed Desi in self-defense, she cannot be arrested. Now, back at home, Amy takes control and tells Nick that he must start acting like a perfect husband. By this point, Nick is genuinely afraid of her. The next morning, a reporter is scheduled to interview them, and Amy instructs Nick to accept everything she has planted as the truth. That he made reckless purchases using his credit cards, that he was abusive toward her, and that their marriage was broken before but is now repaired. However, Nick refuses to go along with this. He has already decided that he wants to leave Amy and get a divorce. But Amy shocks him by revealing that she is pregnant with his child. Nick is stunned because they haven't been intimate for months. Amy explains that she used the sperm samples Nick had stored at a fertility clinic and had herself artificially inseminated. Hearing this, Nick completely loses control and tells her she can't do this and that he will never stay with her. Amy, however, firmly tells him that he has no choice. She reminds him that the entire world is already against him, and if their child is born, she will make sure the child grows up hating him. At this point, Nick realizes he's completely trapped. He understands that the child is his responsibility, and because of that, he decides to stay with Amy. In the end, we see their interview, where both of them publicly announce that Amy is pregnant and that they are expecting a baby soon, presenting themselves as a perfect couple to the world while hiding the dark truth behind their relationship.